Hey, spiritual extremist, Dr. Lloyd-Moffett here in the Mushroom, and we're talking about the Sufi path here. And the term in Sufism is Tariqa, the Sufi way, and it's the spiritual path of the Sufis. It's a journey of the soul, and the destination they talk about as being al-haq, the real. So it's really about encountering what is real in the world, a journey into something profound and deep, but also that is the foundation of reality itself. And remember, for mysticism generally, particularly for Sufism, this is not meant for everyone. It's just meant for the few who are prepared to sacrifice in order to reach this goal. So, how does the Sufi path work? Well, it's said to have 3 stages. The first stage is the preparation of the soul. How do you do that? Well, there's really 2 parts that Sufism says you have to have. The first is asceticism, that is, training the body for spiritual ends. This is the typical stuff we've seen, things like avoidance of sleep, fasting, temporary abstinence, bodily mortification. All these are attempts to prepare the soul for that unity. And Sufism tends to stress that it begins with voluntary poverty. In fact, the word Sufis are often called fakirs or dervishes. They both mean impoverished ones. So eliminating all possessions that tie you to the world. As one Sufi saying is, the true Sufi is the one who possesses nothing and is possessed by nothing. Poverty becomes so central that you often hear this as a term. Now, who is the model for poverty for Sufis? It's the person of Jesus, who was almost a perfect model of poverty. Because as it turns out, according to the tradition, Jesus had one attachment, one possession, and that was a needle, because he wanted to sew his clothes when they got to be problems. And for that reason, Jesus the seamstress was denied the highest heaven. But poverty is really just the beginning here. You have to discipline your body to prepare your soul to give up. And this is the typical things like avoidance of sleep. Look at the quote below. Shah Kamani did not sleep for 40 years, but eventually was overwhelmed by sleep, and he saw God. Then he exclaimed, "O Lord, I was seeking thee in nightly vigils, but I found thee in sleep." God answered, "O Shah, you have found me by means of those nightly vigils. If you had not sought me there, you would not have found me here." Now, in many ways, this concentration on poverty was in direct response to the leaders of the Islamic faith, who were at this time really living pretty opulent lives. And so you see a lot of materialism and worldliness among the Islamic leaders of the day. And the Sufis said, no, you need to concentrate on poverty and elimination of attachments. And this is probably what got the Sufis their name. The term Sufi itself comes from suf, which was a coarse wool garment that they used to discipline their bodies. And this was probably something that they saw Christians wearing at the time, Christian monks who were disciplining their body in the same way. So Sufism is tied, the term is tied directly to this first stage, this asceticism page. Now, not everybody agrees with that. Some people think Sufism comes from Al-Sufa, the people of the porch used to hang out with the Prophet Muhammad. But the initial goal seems to really have been to gain mastery over yourself. And it says that if you are apprenticing to be a Sufi, you should do this for 3 years. Listen to what one Sufi text says. When a novice joins a Sufi order with the purpose of renouncing the world, they subject him to spiritual discipline for the space of 3 years. The first year is devoted to the service of people in the community. The second year is service to God, and the third year is dedicated to watching over his heart. He cannot watch over his own heart only when his thoughts are collected and every care is dismissed, so that in communion with God, he guards his heart from the assaults of heedlessness. So asceticism leads to a place where the body is no longer in control of you, where the body is subject to your desires. This is the desire to develop spiritually. Now, What do you train the body to do? Well, the other part of preparation of the soul is to cultivate a sincere, burning desire for God. And let me tell you a story from the Sufi tradition here. It says that one day Moses, the great Jewish prophet, but also a prophet in Islam, came across a simple shepherd. And the simple shepherd did not know how to pray in the traditional way. And so what did he say? The simple shepherd said each night, "What can I do for you, God? Can I wash your clothes? Can I lick the lice off you? Can I kiss your hands at bedtime?" And Moses was horrified. I mean, that's not how God taught us how to pray, right? And so he tried to teach him all the prayers, but he couldn't do it. The shepherd was simple. He couldn't seem to remember them all, so he stopped praying altogether. And then God rebuked Moses and said, can I quote here, "What seems wrong to you is right for him. What is poison to one is honey to someone else. Purity and impurity, sloth and diligence of worship, these mean nothing to me. I'm apart from all that. Ways of worshiping are not to be ranked as better or worse from one another. I don't hear the words that people say. I look at their humility. Their broken, open lowliness is the reality, not language. Forget phraseology. Forget words. I want burning. Be friends with your burning. Burn up your thinking and your forms of expression. Desire only me." So what's the point here? You may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but what God wants, according to the Sufi tradition, is a heart on fire for him. There's another good story, that there was a disciple who was not the sharpest tool in the shed. And some other disciples said, "Hey, do you want to know the secret of being with God? Well, tie yourself up by your feet and hang from a bridge for hours on end. And repeat the words, some meaningless stuff." And the Sufi tradition says that he followed their advice in full sincerity, and he was illuminated by the morning. And the disciples were like, "Wait, what? We just made that up." And they're like, "Why?" Because God saw that he was willing to do anything to unite with him. So it's this sincerity, this burning desire that is fundamental towards the first phase. And so all your energies should be directed towards God here. This is the sincere burning desire for God. And it's often described in erotic terms. Let's look at the Ibn al-Arabi here. It says, "Oh, her beauty, the tender maid, is brilliance, gives light like lamps to one traveling in the dark. She is a pearl hidden in a shell of hair as black as jet, a pearl for which thought dives and remains unceasingly in the ocean. He who looks upon her deems her to be a gazelle of the sand hills, because of her shapely neck and the loveliness of her gestures." This is the first stage, preparing the soul through asceticism, that is gaining control of the body, and cultivating a sincere, burning desire for God.